Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, heart steady, but your mind racing with questions you've been avoiding? It's not insomnia. It's something deeper, a quiet voice inside urging you to listen. It's not anxiety. It could be the call of growth, the whisper of a wiser version of yourself, waiting to be awakened. If you've ever felt this way, this video, inspired by Denzel Washington's wisdom, is for you. Stick around until the end, because sometimes just one shift in perspective is all it takes to change the way you move forward in life. You might be lying there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, wondering if there's something wrong with your body or if your mind is quietly unraveling. But let me reassure you, this isn't rare. In fact, it's far more common than you might think. And no, it's not just a symptom of aging. I've spoken with many older adults, from retired physicians to seasoned mothers, even artists who once dazzled the spotlight. And they all confess the same thing. Around 3 a.m., they often find themselves awake. At first, they chalked it up to biology, a shift in sleep patterns. But over time, they began to realize it's something deeper. Picture your mind as a room once bustling with light and laughter. When night falls, all the noise disappears, and what remains are the truths you've avoided all day. It might be a quiet fear that's been gnawing at you, questions you've never answered, or a subtle sense of loss you can't quite name. Waking up at 3 a.m. in that absolute stillness feels like an inner whisper saying, it's time to listen to yourself. It's not unlike Carl from Pixar's Up, an old man living in solitude after losing his wife. The silence didn't just echo around him. It amplified everything inside. Carl didn't set out on his adventure just to chase a dream. He needed to heal the parts of himself he had long abandoned. Those 3 a.m. awakenings can feel the same. Raw, unfiltered moments where you meet yourself without pretense or performance. Science might explain it as a shift in REM cycles or a cortisol spike as morning nears. But behind those biological mechanics lies something more profound, a transformation unfolding within. Maybe it's a sign of an upcoming life change. Maybe it's your body and soul gently asking for care, for nourishment, for attention. When you were younger, sleep came easily. Life was too loud, too fast, filled with work, passion, and people. There was no space to hear what was underneath. But as time slows and the noise fades, your soul begins to speak. And 3 a.m. may be the first time you can finally hear it clearly. In the next part of this video, I'll walk you through 5 deeper reasons why many people wake during this hour, and what each one might be quietly trying to tell you. These reasons aren't just about health. They're deeply connected to your life story, your growth, and your return to self. So I ask you, are you ready to face the light that comes, even in the middle of the night? Let's begin with the first reason, the natural decline of melatonin, the hormone responsible for regulating your sleep-wake cycle. You can think of melatonin as the conductor of your body's sleep symphony. When you were younger, your body produced this hormone steadily and abundantly, allowing you to drift into deep, uninterrupted sleep. But over time, like a flame gradually growing dimmer, melatonin levels naturally decrease. As a result, your sleep becomes more fragmented. You may find yourself waking in the middle of the night, especially during transitional phases of the sleep cycle, like around 3 a.m. Without enough melatonin to keep you anchored in rest, your body stirs. And when you wake, it's often accompanied by a strange emptiness, a vague sense of unease, or simply the frustrating inability to fall back asleep. This reminds me of something Robin Williams said in Patch Adams. We don't stop going to school when we graduate. We just start listening more to what's inside of us. And maybe, just maybe, these nighttime awakenings are the body's gentle way of inviting us inward, to pause, to reflect, to care for what's been long ignored. So what can you do about this decline in melatonin without relying on sleeping pills? In the next section, I'll walk you through simple, science-backed strategies that can help your body naturally boost melatonin production, from diet and light exposure to everyday habits you can start implementing today. Let's keep going on this journey. As I mentioned earlier, the drop in melatonin is a natural part of aging. and its effects reach further than most people realize. It's not just about making it harder to fall asleep. It slowly, quietly disrupts the deep, restorative rest you once enjoyed with ease in your younger years. The truth is, many people still fall asleep easily at night. A relaxing evening, a tiring day, it can all lead to a quick slumber. But the unexpected happens around 2, 3, or 4 in the morning. That's when your body no longer has enough melatonin to keep you in that deep resting state. Your eyes open, not because of a nightmare, not because of a sound outside. You wake as if something gently pulled you from your sleep, when all you wanted was to stay in that quiet place a little longer. And then comes the question, what's happening to me? But this isn't your fault. It's not a sign of weakness. It's simply biology shifting with time. What once ran like a perfectly calibrated Swiss watch now functions more subtly, more sensitively, more vulnerable to its environment and rhythm. I remember in an interview, Tom Hanks once said he started understanding his body more clearly after turning 50. He said, "I don't wake up like a machine anymore. I wake up like someone learning to become friends with himself every single day." And maybe that's the real lesson for all of us. Instead of blaming the body, maybe it's time we start listening to it, like an old friend who just wants to be heard. There's another factor that often goes unnoticed, but significantly affects your sleep: the light in your bedroom. When we're young, the body can easily ignore things like street lights slipping through the curtains, the blinking glow of a digital clock, or a faint hallway light. But as we grow older, we become more sensitive to external stimuli, especially light. Even the slightest beam seeping through a door crack can suppress the already dwindling melatonin left in your system at 3 a.m. I once worked with a retired ballet dancer who had been struggling with restless nights for years. She told me, "I didn't know what was wrong. I just couldn't sleep like I used to. I felt like I was losing something precious." It wasn't until she installed blackout curtains, unplugged every glowing device, and switched to a non-illuminated clock that she finally reclaimed the deep, restorative sleep she used to know from her days on stage. That experience taught me something. Sleep is not something you force. It's a gift, one that comes when you create the space for it to arrive. So if you've been waking up during those quiet in-between hours of the night, like 3 a.m., don't rush to blame yourself or your age. See it instead as an invitation, a chance to understand yourself more deeply from the inside out. In the next section, we'll explore the second root cause behind these early awakenings, one that's common, often overlooked, and silently shortening your sleep. As we continue this journey of understanding why we keep waking at 3 a.m., I want to share a story that feels especially close to home. Because this isn't just about sleep. It's a reminder, when you truly understand your body, you no longer see it as an enemy, but as a lifelong companion doing its best to speak to you. Rachel, 72, is living proof of that. For most of his life, he was blessed with the kind of sleep people dream about. Head hits the pillow out like a light, no alarm needed. But recently, almost every night without fail, he'd wake up at exactly 3:15 a.m. No nightmares, no anxiety, no tossing or turning. He was just awake, fully alert, as if something inside him had quietly rung in a new day. At first, Rachel panicked. What did I do wrong? Am I too stressed? Is my health slipping? The same questions looped through his mind every night as he lay there staring at the ceiling in silence. But after speaking with a doctor and diving deeper into the aging process and the role of melatonin, something unexpected happened. He felt relieved. He realized, this isn't my fault. This is part of aging. Waking up in the early hours was no longer a sign of something broken, but a natural shift in his body's circadian rhythm, something that happens to most of us once we cross into our 60s and 70s. And with that understanding, the self-blame stopped. Instead, Rachel began making small, intentional changes to his daily routine. He ensured his bedroom stayed pitch black, no light slipping past the curtains. He kept away from phones, TVs, and anything with blue light at least an hour before bed. He took quiet evening walks, helping his body clock remember when the day ends and night begins. Nothing miraculous happened overnight. Rachel still woke early sometimes, but now, instead of fighting it, he met those awakenings with calm. He understood that his body was doing what it needed to. And most importantly, he no longer fought against it. He learned how to live with it. That's the power of awareness. When you understand that waking early isn't a personal failure, but a quiet shift in your body's rhythm, you begin to respond with wisdom. You adapt, and your life becomes just a little more peaceful. In the next section, we'll explore the second cause behind interrupted sleep, a silent yet incredibly common force that's disrupting rest for so many adults. Because when you stop being angry at your body and start listening to the signals it's been whispering all along, something shifts. Frustration gives way to compassion. And from that awareness, you begin making choices that genuinely support your well-being, especially in those still silent hours before dawn. But that was just the beginning. If you've ever wondered why, despite going to bed early, avoiding screens, and maintaining healthy habits, you still find yourself waking up at exactly 3 a.m. with a strange sense that you've had enough, the answer may lie in a lesser-known biological phenomenon, the shift in sleep cycles known as the advanced sleep phase. As we enter midlife and beyond, the internal clock that once ticked seamlessly in rhythm with the sun and the buzz of daily life begins to move forward. This means you might start feeling drowsy earlier in the evening, sometimes as early as 8 p.m., and without any alarm set, your body wakes up long before dawn. This isn't a backward habit. It's not outdated or unhealthy. It's simply the body's natural programming adjusting with time. In our youth, our sleep tendencies lean toward late to bed, late to rise. We could power through movie marathons, late-night meetings, or all-nighters with friends. But as our circadian rhythm shifts, so does our sleep window. Without even trying, you may find yourself dozing off by 9 p.m. and completing a full sleep cycle by 3 a.m. Think of it like a film screening. If the movie starts at 9 p.m., it wraps up by 3 a.m. If you try to stretch the runtime just to match your old schedule, you'll find yourself awake at odd hours, alert and out of sync. A fictional example comes to mind. Benjamin Button from The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. While purely imaginative, Benjamin's reverse aging reminded me of how our internal rhythm also seems to run backward over time. The body isn't breaking down. It's adapting in subtle ways that are easy to misread as something being wrong. So what's the solution? Rather than resist these changes, we can learn to adjust our lives in harmony with our internal clock. Maybe that means embracing earlier bedtimes, reshaping your evening routine, or simply allowing your body to wake up when it's ready, without guilt or force. And when you meet this shift with gratitude instead of resistance, sleep stops being a nightly battle. It becomes music again. All you have to do is learn the new rhythm. In the next part, we'll explore a different element, one that doesn't stem from hormones or circadian rhythms, but from something deeper, the heart and mind. There are nights when you wake in the middle of darkness, glance at the clock and see 3 a.m. Yet your mind is crystal clear, as if you've slept a full night. Outside, the world is still wrapped in silence. Everyone else is asleep, but your body signals it's time to begin the day. That's not a malfunction. It's not a disorder. It's your body operating on a new schedule, a refined version of itself shaped by the years. Imagine your body as an old pendulum clock. After decades of ticking through spring, summer, fall, and winter, its rhythm begins to shift. Not because it's broken, but because it's being quietly and gracefully tuned by time. Each passing year winds it forward just a little more, making you sleepy earlier. And waking you earlier, too. There's nothing harmful about this, but it can feel unsettling when the rest of life, your family routines, your social calendar, still runs on the old time zone. One reason this change becomes more noticeable is because of our environment and mental state. Many older adults live in quieter spaces now, with fewer distractions than in their years of raising kids or working full-time. That silence, once a luxury, is now part of daily life. And with fewer interruptions from meetings, phone calls, or crowded schedules, the body naturally begins to power down earlier, like a cafe that once stayed open until midnight, but now closes by dusk. It reminds me of a scene from Pixar's Up, where Mr. Carl lives alone in a quiet house. Every movement, every step echoes like a ticking clock. No one left to wait for. No more late-night laughter or stories. And in that deep stillness, his body gradually resets its rhythm, not to match the outside world, but to honor its own internal tempo. The solution isn't to force yourself back into your old pace, but to walk in step with a new one. Maybe that means rearranging your evening to be gentler, more intentional, like a quiet ritual welcoming sleep. Maybe it means embracing the peace of early mornings, writing in your journal, listening to birdsong, or simply sipping tea while the world still slumbers. And when you stop fighting that shift, when you surrender to this new rhythm, you'll see that these quiet hours aren't signs of aging. They're gifts of awareness and self-understanding. As life slows to a softer tempo, like a melody easing out of its crescendo, we begin to notice the quiet changes happening in our bodies. One of those is our circadian rhythm, the internal conductor of sleep and wakefulness, gently shifting with age. No longer driven by morning traffic, meetings, or weekend brunches, retirement brings silence. And in that silence, the body starts to keep time in its own quiet way. Picture this: when there are fewer time cues from the outside, no office hours, no school pickups, no dinner plans, our bodies begin to listen more closely to their internal signals. Without the noise of social schedules, the biological clock grows stronger, clearer. Afternoons stretch longer. Evenings come sooner, and you find yourself sleepy by 8 p.m., awake by 3. Let me tell you about Mr. Brooks, 68 years old and retired for a few years now. He used to worry. Almost every night, he'd wake up at 3 a.m. No dreams, no anxiety, just wide awake, like the day had already begun. At first, he feared it was insomnia, a common worry among older adults. But after some reading and a few conversations with his doctor, he learned it wasn't a disorder at all. It was part of a biological shift known as the advanced sleep phase. And once Brooks understood this, the fear fell away. No more blame, no more frustration. Instead, he started making gentle adjustments to his evenings. Instead of lights out at 8:30 sharp, he'd read under a soft yellow lamp. A warm novel or a worn poetry book would keep him up just a little longer. Sometimes, he'd take a quiet stroll through the backyard, breathing in the cool night air. And every so often, he'd call his daughter just to chat, a few kind words, and his heart would lift like a sip of hot tea on a cold night. Those small changes helped Brooks delay his bedtime just enough. And in doing so, he no longer found himself waking up at 3 a.m. His sleep gradually grew deeper, more restful. And when he woke, it was in sync with the rhythms of the day. He no longer felt out of step with the world. On the contrary, he felt reconnected, not just with his sleep, but with his life. The truth is, many older adults go through this shift, but few talk about it. We often associate sleep with perfection. It has to be 8 hours, uninterrupted, and right on schedule. But once we understand that our bodies are simply restructuring in their own quiet way, we can let go of those invisible pressures. We can choose to live in harmony with change instead of resisting it, with patience, with awareness, and maybe even a little self-compassion. There's something seemingly small, yet surprisingly unsettling for many older adults, waking up at 3 a.m. in a state of total alertness, as if the night's rest is already complete, as if the body is gently saying, "We've slept enough." Many don't understand why this happens. And then comes the worry. Am I developing insomnia? Is something wrong with me? But the truth is, nothing is wrong. Your body is simply operating on a new biological rhythm, one that starts a bit earlier than before. It's a natural cadence of aging, a quiet shift, that's all. And once you see that, once you truly understand that this is not a malfunction, but a normal transformation, everything gets easier. It's like this: when you stop blaming a sudden downpour and start looking for shelter, the rain no longer feels like an enemy. Understanding is the umbrella that helps you weather these unexpected changes with grace. Once you realize your body is simply working the early shift, you can begin to redesign your daily rhythm, gently, intentionally, in a way that feels easier, more peaceful, more aligned. If you're still watching this video, and if these reflections have resonated with your own journey of caring for your health, go ahead and leave a comment below with the number 2. That's your way of saying, I'm here, I'm listening, I care about myself. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, don't hesitate. Hit that follow button and turn on notification bell. Because in the videos to come, we'll continue exploring the body, the mind, and the aging process with compassion, clarity, and a sense of calm control. Now, let's explore another common, but often overlooked, reason behind waking up in the middle of the night: subtle physical discomfort or underlying health issues. As we age, it's not just our internal clock that shifts. Our bodies start to speak up, quietly but insistently. You might not hear your body crying out, but a dull ache in the knees, a fleeting muscle cramp, or a slight bloating sensation. Any of these can nudge you awake without a clear reason. During the day, with all the noise and activity, these signals often get drowned out. But at night, in the deep silence, every whisper from the body echoes, like a pin dropping in an empty room. A dear friend of mine, Emma, 74, once told me she thought she was suffering from chronic insomnia. Every night, without fail, she would wake up at 3 a.m., unable to fall back asleep. But after a full medical checkup, her doctor found she had mild arthritis, not painful enough to make her cry out, but just enough to cause discomfort when lying in one position too long. Once she swapped out her pillow, switched to a softer blanket, and added some light stretching before bed, her sleep improved dramatically. She looked at me, eyes glistening, and said, "Turns out, aging didn't steal my sleep. I just didn't know how to care for it properly." And that's exactly what I want you to remember. Every change in your sleep has a reason. And the beauty is, there's almost always something you can do to adapt. When we understand, we fear less. When we act, we begin to regain control. And slowly, sleep, that precious gift of life, can return to us softer, deeper, more complete. There are reasons we wake in the night that don't come with alarms or dramatic signals. They slip in quietly, like a leaf falling just outside your window at midnight. But still, they're powerful enough to pull you from your rest. It might be a dull throb in your knee, a gentle tightness in your lower back, or simply your bladder politely announcing it's time to be emptied. These seemingly small things can accumulate, and for older adults, they're often enough to fracture sleep, leaving us suspended between wakefulness and dreams. Picture this. You're lying warm beneath your blanket, halfway through a deep, restorative sleep, when suddenly a strange sensation stirs you. Maybe it's the low buzz in your knees, arthritis making itself known after hours of stillness. Or maybe it's a mild wave of acid reflux, the cost of a late dinner followed by a little too much rest right afterward. These aren't emergencies, but they are persistent whispers that pull you gently, yet firmly, out of sleep. It reminds me of a scene from The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, where the protagonist ages in reverse. One of the most poignant parts of that journey is how fragile sleep becomes in later years. The older we grow, the more sensitive we become, not just to sound or light, but to slight changes in temperature, air moisture, or even the dry feeling in our mouths or a brief muscle spasm in our calves. And for many men, there's a universal reality that sets in after middle age: changes in the bladder. As we get older, it loses elasticity, which means the urge to urinate becomes more urgent and more frequent. Waking up at 3 a.m. just to use the bathroom becomes a nightly ritual for many, even if there was never a problem before. It's not an exception, it's biology, a natural part of growing older. But here's the good news. Once you understand what your body is trying to say, you can respond to it with wisdom and care. Maybe you shift your dinner time earlier. Maybe you cut down on water late at night. Or maybe you invest in a better mattress that relieves pressure on your joints. These are small steps, but they can have a profound impact on your ability to sleep soundly. Remember this, your body is not working against you. It's simply trying to communicate in its own way. And once you learn to listen, You'll no longer feel like you're being interrupted in the night. You'll feel like you're being called back to yourself, to gentler care, to a more mindful kind of living. There are things that seem invisible by day, but have the power to quietly reshape our lives. And sleep is one of them. During the day, between meetings, chores, conversations, and endless to-dos, your body's signals can get blurred by the noise. But at night, when the world grows still and the clock strikes 3 a.m., that's when those strange sensations begin to speak. I know that feeling all too well. You wake up, at first, just to use the bathroom. But afterward, no matter how hard you try, you can't fall back asleep. It only took a few steps out of bed, but somehow your body has fallen out of that deep, restful rhythm and into a state of gentle alertness. And once your body flips that switch, returning to sleep becomes a challenge. It's like driving a highway. You tap the brakes just once, and suddenly, you lose all your momentum. Sleep is no different. One often overlooked, but surprisingly common, cause of disrupted sleep is the side effects of medication. Many older adults regularly rely on prescriptions to manage blood pressure, heart conditions, or chronic pain. While these medications are essential for maintaining physical health, they can also quietly interfere with the body's natural rhythms. Some increase nighttime urination. Others affect the body's ability to regulate temperature. Some even heighten sensitivity to light or sound. Factors that might seem trivial, but are actually crucial for a peaceful, uninterrupted night's rest. I once heard a story that struck very close to home. Nadia, a 76-year-old woman, had always been a light sleeper. But over the past year, she found herself waking up at exactly 3:30 a.m. every single night. At first, she assumed it was just part of getting older. But eventually, she brought it up to her doctor and was stunned to discover the true cause. One of her medications was mildly dehydrating her body, increasing the frequency of nighttime trips to the bathroom. With her doctor's thoughtful guidance, Nadia adjusted her medication schedule and made a few changes to her daily water intake. Within just a few weeks, those nightly awakenings became less frequent, and she could feel the shift in her sleep quality. Her story reminded me of a simple yet powerful truth. When we begin to pay attention to the little things, life changes in the biggest ways. And I share this not just to tell you a story, but to remind you, if you're facing something similar, don't rush to accept it as an unavoidable part of aging. Sometimes, all it takes is one small step, a conversation with your doctor, a few nights of observing your sleep habits, and you might discover the clues that help you reclaim the rest you deserve. Waking up in the middle of the night, especially around 3 a.m., can leave us feeling like our bodies are slipping, like we've lost the ability to sleep deeply the way we once did. But often, the truth is the opposite. When I heard Nadia's story, a woman at 76 still willing to listen to her body, it became clear to me what we assume is a problem may actually be the body's quiet way of speaking up, offering important messages we've overlooked. Once she understood the issue behind her medication, Nadia didn't panic. She didn't resign herself to endless, sleepless nights. Instead, she took action. She adjusted when she took her pills, avoided drinking too much water before bed, and added gentle movement to her afternoon routine. And then something beautiful happened. The awakening stopped. Or, if she did wake up, she could drift back to sleep with ease, without hours of tossing and turning. What I want to emphasize here is this. When your body wakes you in the middle of the night, it doesn't mean it's breaking down. On the contrary, it means your body is still responsive, still alert, still capable of recalibrating. These awakenings, if you learn to understand them, can become signals, reminders to care for yourself more thoughtfully, to make wiser choices, and most importantly, to rebuild a deep trust in your body. Waking up at 3 a.m. can feel frustrating, even powerless. But sometimes it's actually an invitation to pause, to reflect on how you're living, and to examine how well you're caring for yourself. It's a quiet nudge that says, make a small adjustment, and everything might begin to change. And if you're still with me at this point, I want to share one more often overlooked, but incredibly common cause of waking up too early. The small habits in our daily lives that seem harmless, yet silently reshape our internal clock. Many older adults begin eating dinner earlier, winding down sooner, and going to bed earlier than they used to. At the same time, their level of physical activity often drops significantly. Over time, these subtle shifts, repeated day after day, create a new internal schedule, signaling to the body that night begins earlier. And naturally, this means the morning arrives earlier too, sometimes as early as 3 a.m. Do you remember the curious case of Benjamin Button? There's a line from that film I've always loved. Our lives are defined by opportunities, even the ones we miss. Waking up at 3 a.m. might just be one of those missed or perhaps hidden opportunities. A quiet whisper from the body, gently urging us to make a change. Even the smallest shift could bring more vitality, deeper rest, and a greater sense of peace. When we step into retirement, life begins to slow, naturally and gently, like a quiet river branching off, shedding the weight of daily busyness. No more rushing out the door each morning. No more tight work schedules or back-to-back meetings. But in that stillness, something else happens. The body starts losing the familiar signals that once helped it keep a steady rhythm. I used to believe that as long as I got enough hours of sleep, I was doing fine. But I've learned that enough isn't just about duration. It's about timing and how we fall asleep. Without daily movement or mental stimulation, the body stops receiving cues it once relied on. Things like driving to work, going for a jog, or chatting with colleagues. These used to keep us alert and engaged during the day. Now, they're simply gone. And when those cues vanish, the body's natural sleep-wake cycle begins drifting earlier and earlier. Imagine a quiet evening. Soft lighting, no loud noises, no intense mental activity. That's the perfect environment for the brain to start producing melatonin, the hormone that triggers sleep, much earlier than it used to. Sometimes it happens right after dinner, before we even realize it's fully dark outside. Sleepiness creeps in like a gentle breeze. And once you fall asleep early, it's no surprise your body finishes its rest cycle early too, leaving you wide awake at 3 a.m., long before the world begins to stir. It's not just light and activity that matter. Mealtime plays a major role in how we sleep as well. Eating dinner early may be good for digestion and overall health, but if there's no light snack before bed, blood sugar can drop slightly during the night. Not enough to make you feel hungry, but just enough to trigger a subtle internal alarm that disrupts your rest. I once read something in Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker that stayed with me. Sleep is the foundation of every biological function, from emotion to memory, from physical health to mental clarity. So when we understand how these seemingly small lifestyle changes impact our sleep, we gain the power to gently reset our rhythm. Maybe it's adding light movement in the late afternoon. Maybe it's keeping the evenings softly lit and quietly calm. Or maybe it's as simple as having a small snack before bed. Whatever it is, it helps your body rest not just long enough, but at the right time, in the right way. Waking up at 3 a.m. isn't always a sign of something being wrong. Sometimes, it's simply the body responding, quite logically, to the absence of the familiar guiding cues it once relied on. And the good news is you can rebuild those cues gently, deliberately, and with deep self-compassion. Something as seemingly harmless as an afternoon cup of coffee, something we've long considered a casual indulgence, can quietly disrupt your sleep, especially as you move past middle age. As the body slows with time, it also metabolizes caffeine more slowly. What once cleared your system in a matter of hours now lingers, well into the night. That mild stimulant can make your sleep fragile, vulnerable to the smallest sounds, the faintest sliver of light, or even a passing thought. I once had a conversation with John, a 74-year-old man who had recently retired after decades running his family's business. Back when he was working, his days had structure, early mornings, a full schedule, lots of movement, and true relaxation only came in the evening. But over time, that rhythm quietly unraveled. He started eating dinner at 5 p.m., occasionally dozing off in his recliner during the 6 o'clock news, and was often in bed before the clock even struck 9. At first, he didn't think much of it. Life felt quiet, even peaceful, until something strange began happening with alarming consistency. He'd wake up, wide awake, at 3 a.m., not groggy, not drifting in and out, just awake. And as the rest of the world continued to sleep, he'd find himself sitting alone in the silence, asking the same question again and again. Why am I awake at this hour? After a while, John began observing himself more closely. That's when he realized the gradual shift in his lifestyle had thrown his internal clock out of sync with real time. And rather than stay frustrated or confused, he chose to experiment with small but intentional changes. Each afternoon, he committed to a 20-minute walk around the neighborhood. In the evenings, instead of zoning out in front of the TV with the lights dimmed, he switched to reading under brighter light. And most importantly, he made it a rule to avoid nodding off after dinner. Little by little, those simple adjustments began to pull his circadian rhythm back, just enough to delay his sleep and bring his waking hours closer to the ideal start of his day. And the best part? He didn't just start sleeping better. He began waking up feeling refreshed, energized, like his body and mind were finally syncing again, back in tune, back in balance. Not every sleep issue stems from the body. Some nights, you find yourself wide awake at 3 a.m., not because of back pain or a noise or a sliver of light slipping through the door, but because somewhere deep within, something has stirred. An unnamed emotion, an unfinished thought. It's then you realize, not all exhaustion shows up in the muscles. Some weariness lives quietly in old memories, in the things we've buried beneath years of busyness and avoidance. I once came across a line in the movie Good Will Hunting, where Sean tells Will, "It's not your fault." Just 4 simple words, repeated over and over, until the tough, guarded young man finally breaks down, sobbing like a child. Because sometimes sleeplessness isn't about not being tired. It's about a mind still wrestling with what hasn't yet healed. When you retire, when your children grow up, when your job is no longer the center of your life, a strange kind of quiet begins to take up space. And in that stillness, forgotten emotions begin to resurface. Grief, anxiety, regret, even hope. They return like long-lost visitors, knocking on the door of your heart in the dead of night. You start to wonder, have I truly lived the life I wanted? Is there something I left unfinished? These questions aren't wrong. In fact, they're a natural part of growing older. But if we never learn to face them, they'll keep returning night after night. Like a clock that's been off for years, it's time to recalibrate the mind, to find stillness once more. So what's the answer? Sometimes, healing begins with the courage to sit with your feelings. Write down what's on your mind before bed. Talk to a trusted friend. Speak with a professional. Or just sit quietly in meditation, letting your thoughts rise and fall like waves. Don't see your 3 a.m. wake-up call as a problem. See it as an invitation. A gentle summons from within, urging you to reconnect with yourself. And if you're still here with me, if something in this speaks to you, leave the number 4 in the comments. That way, I'll know you're out there, walking this road alongside me. And if you haven't yet followed this channel, I encourage you to do so. Because this journey of reclaiming peaceful sleep and inner calm is one we can walk together. Now let's keep going. There's something important we still need to talk about. When life begins to slow down, when we're no longer caught in the whirlwind of work, parenting, or social obligations, that's when silence begins to speak. Have you noticed? Some mornings, when the world is still cloaked in darkness. No traffic, no one calling your name, no pressing concerns. And yet, you're awake, restless, not because of pain, not because you need the bathroom, not because your circadian rhythm is off, but because something inside you is quietly stirring. It's not the loud, urgent anxiety of youth, the kind that makes you panic or feel lost. No, this is different. It's more like a silent melody playing in the background of your mind, a hint of regret over an old decision, a misconnection, a word you never said, or just a vague sense of incompleteness, a feeling that something is unresolved within you. You lie there in the dark, eyes wide open, and your mind gently begins to open one drawer after another, not out of nostalgia, but as if searching for something that still needs to be understood. And then there's loneliness. As the years go by, our social circles quietly shrink. Children get busy with their own families. Friends drift. Activities that once filled our time no longer suit us. Loneliness doesn't always arrive with tears or sighs. Sometimes it looks like a quiet dinner, a phone that doesn't ring, or a morning where no one is waiting for your hello. But if you're feeling this way, please don't see it as weakness. In truth, facing these feelings head-on takes strength. Let those quiet, sleepless moments become a bridge back to yourself. Write in your journal. Listen to soft music, or simply place your hand over your heart and whisper, "I'm okay." Remember, emotional awareness is the first step toward healing. And if you stayed with me this far, leave a comment with the number 5. That way I'll know you're still here, with me, journeying into the quiet depths of the soul. And don't forget to follow the channel, because what comes next will lead us into an even more tender space. The link between mind, body, and the true essence of peaceful sleep. There are nights when we wake up in the middle of our sleep. Not because of a sound, not because the sleep was light, but simply because the soul needs room to breathe. It's not a sign of turmoil. Sometimes, it's just the heart's way of speaking. Much like a melody doesn't need to crescendo to move us, emotions don't need to be loud to be worth listening to. I still remember Mrs. Harper, a woman who had lived through 8 decades of love, loss, and life. She didn't overcome loneliness by avoiding it, but by facing it head-on. The small journal by her bedside was her quiet escape, a place where she could empty the weight of her thoughts. Through those gentle, nightly rituals, she found her way back into restful sleep. And that's what I want to share with you today. The human heart is not a clock. It doesn't follow a rigid schedule. It remembers what it wants to remember, asks the questions it needs answered. And often, those things come to us right around 3 a.m. when the world outside falls silent and the mind is no longer pulled in 100 directions by the noise of daily life. But you know what? That's not a flaw. That's not a defect. It's the mark of a deep inner world. Not everyone can feel the subtle trembling of memory, the quiet ache of unanswered questions, or the pulse of a forgotten part of themselves asking to be seen again. In those late-night awakenings, instead of blaming myself for not being able to sleep, I started asking different questions. What is my mind trying to tell me right now? Is there something in me that's asking to be expressed? Which part of me is in need of tenderness, of compassion? I once heard a character in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button say, "We're defined by the choices we make, by what we hold on to, and by what we've lost." And it's true. Every experience, whether loud and overwhelming or quiet and slow burning, shapes the person we are today. These aren't just memories. They're pieces of our identity. They are our emotional fingerprints. So if you too have ever found yourself awake at midnight with your heart full of quiet unrest, don't rush to dismiss it. Approach that moment with curiosity and kindness. You might just find that it holds more than just a better night's sleep. It might hold a deeper understanding of who you truly are, a gift few moments in life can offer. If you're still here with me, and something in this resonates with you, leave a comment with the number 7. Because who knows, your story might be the light someone else needs to feel a little less alone in the dark. As this video draws to a close, I want to offer you a moment of stillness. Not to say goodbye, but to give you space to truly listen to yourself. Like a soft, lingering melody at the end of a concert, when the noise has faded and all that remains is the quiet echo of emotion. Take this moment to reflect. What part of what I shared today truly moved you? Was it the gentle shift in your internal rhythm? A vague signal from your body? Or was it the undercurrent of emotion that only rises when the world outside is asleep? Whatever it was, it's not a malfunction. It's a doorway, a quiet invitation to explore a new understanding of what it means to be awake at 3 a.m. These experiences aren't meaningless. They're signs, proof that your body is still responding, your mind is still reaching, and you're still evolving. There's a quiet power in understanding your own body, especially in the calm just before dawn. when the outside world is at rest. The voice within becomes unmistakably clear. And instead of seeing these wakeful moments as interruptions or burdens, what if you saw them as a soft nudge, a gentle tap on the shoulder, reminding you to tune in to your own needs, habits, and heartbeat? I truly believe none of us are alone in this journey. At some point, every one of us has woken up in the still of the night, puzzling over life, over the past, or just quietly yearning to be understood. You are no exception. And when you begin to understand yourself, you gain strength. And that strength, once it takes root, becomes a light. A light that doesn't just help you sleep better, but helps you live more deeply, more clearly, and more truthfully in the present chapter of your life. So keep listening to yourself with patience and with grace. Because maybe, just maybe, those 3 a.m. awakenings aren't something to worry about. Maybe they're the very doorway to becoming someone stronger, more self-loving, and more intentionally alive. If you're still with me at the end of this video, leave a comment with the number 8. Because maybe it's you, through your compassion and honesty, who will touch someone else's heart tonight, someone who's also awake and searching for peace. Sometimes it's the smallest changes, the quietest realizations, that unlock deeper rest, fuller presence, and a more peaceful connection to our own soul. I believe you're not just growing older, you're growing wiser in a way that's uniquely beautiful. And that journey deserves to be honored, not simply as aging, but as an inward evolution. If along the way you recognize yourself in some of the reasons sleep gets interrupted, then congratulations. Because awareness is the first step toward healing. No one grows older without carrying the changes life brings, both in body and in spirit. But within those changes, you still hold the power, the choice to slow down, to listen deeper, and to care for yourself more gently than ever before. Just like Benjamin once said in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, it's never too late, or in my case, too early, to be whoever you want to be. That line is a quiet reminder. At any stage, you can reset your rhythm, your rest, your pace, and feel whole again. Waking up at 3 a.m. isn't a warning. It might be a whisper, a gentle invitation to step outside the rush and come home to every breath, every silence, and every small dream you once forgot. And if you stayed with me all the way to the end of this video, I want to say thank you. Truly, because that means you're choosing a more intentional way of living, a path rooted in empathy, in patience, and in the quiet transformation that begins from within. I would genuinely love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, something you learned today, or a small shift you're inspired to make to take better care of yourself. Don't hold back. What you write might be exactly what someone else needs to read to feel a little less alone. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with the people you care about. Your support is the greatest motivation for us to keep creating meaningful content that not only inspires, but also nurtures the spirit one day at a time.